Hello, this is Tammy with Autistic Wiki again, and today I want to talk to you about some of the problems that come up with speaking when you're autistic. So these are some experiences that I have with speech and communication. I don't know that this happens to everybody. I really don't know how common this is or anything, but so I've identified at least 3 different versions of communication problems that I have. So when for some reason I just can't talk or won't talk, or for when I want to talk but I can't talk. So there's kind of a few different ways that it happens for me. So the 3 that I've been able to identify so far are what I call, I'm just going to make up a name and call it observation mode. So I kind of go into this phase where I'm just observing people, but I have no desire or no desire to interact with humans, even if they're talking directly to me. For some reason, it's like their words just bounce right off of me and they mean nothing. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I know people can really take that wrong, but and it's not meant in a bad way. I don't feel anything bad towards them. It's almost as if someone came up to you speaking in a language you don't understand, and you're just like, whatever. And I hear words. I can understand more or less what they're saying, but I just don't have the urge to respond back to them. When I'm in observation mode, and I don't know what causes it or what prompts it, but it just happens. And I think it happened a lot more when I was a little kid than it does now. And to be fair, I mean, I'm trying to look back and observe things through my eyes when I didn't realize that they were happening. Because it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I even realized that this was part of my symptoms or whatever, because I just thought that, not talking or not responding to people, it just felt normal to me. Or sometimes I would respond in my head and I would think that they can hear it, or like we can communicate telepathically or something. So sometimes I would respond to people in my head but not out loud, and I would just assume that they knew what I was saying to them. So when I'm in what I call observation mode, where I'm just observing people but not interacting or not trying to talk to them, when I'm in this mode, it feels like I don't even have the ability to speak. So so I don't even try to make an attempt to. So you know how, like, when you start to talk, you can feel your voice box or your cords or whatever start to move in getting ready for the words or the sounds. Well, when I'm in observation mode, that just doesn't happen. So, like, even if I think of a response, it's as if the response was intended to only go back telepathic. Like, I always have this joke that my first language is telepathy and English is my second language, because that's kind of what it feels like. Is I would just respond what I thought telepathically or in my mind, and my voice box never even engaged or tried to engage. It was just as if it didn't exist and it wasn't there. So and that's why I say I'm not doing this as a way to be like passive aggressive, shut someone out or give them the silent treatment or something. It was just, for whatever reason, during those phases, is my voice box just doesn't engage, and it doesn't even try to make a sound, and yeah, I don't know why. It's just, that's the way it is. Another version of not being able to speak or having trouble speaking that I've identified is, I'll call this one panic mode. So like when something big and shocking happens and I want to speak but I can't speak. So a few times that this happened was like I was walking down the street and someone came up and attacked me, and I wanted to call out for help, and in my head I can hear myself screaming, but my voice box, my vocal cords did not engage, and there was, and my my mouth was still closed. Like I kind of realized after observing myself for a second that outwardly I was not making any sounds at all, that my screaming was all inside my head and nobody else could hear it. So there are times when I want to speak to somebody, but I can't speak to somebody. And I think probably neurotypical people can understand this, because I'm sure everybody has had some situation where they were so stunned they couldn't respond. And, and usually it's for something good, like, probably like when you got engaged or something, or when somebody gave you big news, like, your daughter's pregnant, and you're like, and you can't respond for a few seconds. Like you want to say congratulations or how dare you, whichever one, but you can't, because for a few seconds or for a little bit of time you are stunned, and your body can't make sounds or respond to it. So my panic mode is very similar to that, whereas where normal people might only be stunned for a few seconds and then be able to speak again. If something trips off the panic mode for me, I won't be able to speak. Sometimes it'll be 20-30 minutes before I get my ability to talk again. And then it'll kind of come in slowly, where I'll be able to do like a few words here or there, but it does take a while before I can get my speech back. And when I'm in that mode is somebody speaking to me, not only am I not able to respond to them, but to a large degree, I have a really hard time even understanding what they're saying to me. It's almost as if I lose my ability to understand English. People will be speaking to me and it'll just sound like garbled. It'll sound like garble. And it doesn't happen every single time, and it doesn't happen for the entire 30-minute length of time, but it will, from time to time, I will lose my ability to understand speech, to understand what people are saying to me, to be able to respond back. And this is one of those scary things when I see in the news where the police, come up to an autistic person and they're firing off commands at them. That absolutely terrifies me, because I don't know if that autistic person is having the same response, but I know that if I was in that position, I would go into panic mode, and I would, one, lose my ability to respond or to answer, and two, I would lose my ability to even understand what the hell they're saying. So I would probably end up getting shot or something, and it terrifies me when I see things like that on the news. And I have no control over it. Like when it kicks off, it might last only 5 minutes, or it might last 30 minutes. I don't know how long it's going to take until I get my ability to speak again. So that's kind of scary when that happens. The other one that I've identified is what I will call social anxiety mode. So this is another one where I want to talk, but I lose my ability to talk. And it's a little bit different. So in this particular one, I do feel my vocal cords or my voice box trying to move. But when I try to talk, it's like I suddenly got really, really dry and my voice just cuts off and I start choking. And this happened to me one time when I was doing an interview. I was doing an interview like the phone screen. You know how you start with they call you on the phone first and chat for like a half hour, and then if they like you, they set up an interview. So during the phone screen, like just phone calls are hard for me anyways. I have a really hard time with phone calls, but it's part of the process. So like I had my information laid out in front of me. I was ready to go. Like I had my cup of coffee, everything that I can do to like calm myself down and get ready for it. I like got myself psyched up. So I'm excited for this call. Like I made notes of what I'll talk about so that I don't, because you have to kind of get your scripts ready. So I spent a lot of time preparing and ready to go. And we start the conversation, and for the first 5-10 minutes, it's going okay. And then they get to the point where they're, like they tell me about something, and so I start answering this question, and it was a question I was prepared for, so it was okay. I had a story ready, because there's only a certain number of types of questions that they ask you, so you can just have a few responses ready for when that type of question comes up. So it was some general question. It was probably like, tell me a time that you had a difficulty at work and you resolved it. Like one of those general, simple questions. I was ready to go with it. So I started explaining, and then all of a sudden my voice cut out, and I'm like, oh no. And as soon as that happens, I start to panic, because I know that once it happens, it gets worse and worse and worse until I'm zero. Like when it first starts happening, I can talk a little bit, but I choke and start coughing every few seconds, and my voice gets really, really dry. And then I have to drink a lot of water, and then I feel like, okay, I'm okay now, and then I start to talk, and then I choke again, and it's just like this circle. It's just this, self-feeding circle that you can't break out of. And the only way to break out of it is to leave the situation and walk away, and for like however long it takes for my voice to come back, and that might be 10 minutes, might be 20 minutes. And it was out over the telephone, so once my voice started going out, like at some point I was like, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. And they're like, oh, that's okay, just keep, take your time, and don't worry about it, you'll be fine. So I'm like, okay. And I thought that I had got it back, and I started talking again and explaining my thing, but then I started choking again, and then it got really bad, and I had to mute myself because I was choking so bad. And then the person, I can tell the person on the other side is like, did she hang up? Is she still there? And they're just like, hello? Are you there? And I'm like trying to answer, but I'm choking so hard I can't answer. And eventually I came back. I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm just, because it kind of sounds like that. And they're like, all right, well, maybe we'll just do this another time then. Thanks. Have a great day. And they hang up, and that was the end of it. They're not going to call me back another time. So that is another thing that's really hard, because if you're looking for a job, and all of us have to look for a job at some point, part of it is navigating this whole social gauntlet where you have to have that phone conversation, you have to have that face-to-face interview, and you might have to have 3 or 4 different interviews, and if you lose your voice, it's really hard to not be negatively affected in that interview, because in that interview every little negative thing affects you. So what are you going to do? So are you going to declare up front, I'm autistic, I have trouble with noises, or I have trouble talking, so I might lose my voice during this and not be able to continue? Well, part of the requirements for almost every job are excellent verbal and written communication skills. So if you go in saying, I have trouble with communication, already that's an easy way for them to say, okay, you don't qualify for this job. Especially if it's somebody who doesn't have someone close to them who has autism and has a positive view of it, right? Because if the only thing you know about autism is all of the bad stuff related to it, and then you come into an interview with someone who declares, hi, I'm autistic, well, now you don't want to work with them, because the only thing you know about autism is all bad stuff. So now you get, and not only that, it can put the interviewer kind of on the offensive, because autism is one of the things protected by the disability laws. So you can't discriminate against somebody just because they're autistic. But at the same time, human nature is what it is, and if somebody declaring up front that they're autistic makes you the interviewer, uncomfortable, you can't help but find some other safe reason to say, well, this person didn't qualify, I'm not going to call them back for an interview. And I'm not saying they're trying to do anything wrong. It's just, like I said, it's human nature. You don't want to continue interacting with somebody who makes you feel uncomfortable. And I can understand why a company would feel uncomfortable to move forward with an interview and then later not extend an offer if they decide that we just aren't working out together, because now they might feel like, well, the person already declared their disability, now we're kind of on the hook to prove why we didn't hire them, when normally they just either give you no answer or say we found somebody else who's better fit. So that's a hard one too. I mean, how do we as autistics navigate that whole social anxiety space when you're doing interviews, when you're just interacting with people, when you're making a phone call to the doctor, when you're doing any one of these things where And I can lose my voice during any one of those, because anytime I'm interacting with somebody and have to talk to them, that's when my social anxiety goes up, and that's when I start to lose my voice. And it could be the simplest thing. It even happens with people that I'm very comfortable with. It's even happened with when I was with friends. If I have to talk for any length of time, I'll lose my voice because I get anxious. It's just a thing with me. I can't help it. So I really don't know how we navigate these things. I don't know what the answer is or what the workaround is, because like I said, the only thing you can do is disclose your disability up front. But you're not supposed to disclose your disability up front, because that makes the company feel like they're being judged, and how, so it's kind of a no-win situation. There's no good way to get around it. So those are my versions. Those are the three main versions that I have when it comes to not talking to people. The social anxiety one comes up fairly recently, fairly common, because there are lots of different situations where I have to talk to somebody and I just lose my voice during it. The observation mode one, what's interesting is I don't always understand how often I'm in observation mode, but I'm starting to realize that I probably at least used to spend a lot of time in observation mode and not realizing it. And now that I'm kind of aware of it, since I've been probably over the last year just observing when I don't talk or when I have trouble talking, and that's when I started noticing that I was in observation mode and not responding to people when they were talking to me. And this is probably one of those, when you're assessing little children, and one of the things you look for is, do they not respond to your name? Do they not seem to be aware that you're there when you're trying to interact with them? And I think they're probably in this observation mode thing. I do think that I was in this mode a lot when I was a little kid, because again, I just thought that I was responding to people, but I was doing it in my head. I wasn't doing it out loud, and I honestly didn't know that they couldn't hear me. I think it was just a couple of years ago where I figured out, and you would think all right, continue on, because the last video froze. So as I was saying, it was only a few years ago that I realized that I do spend a lot of time in observation mode, and I simply don't respond to people when they talk to me or whatever. And as a little kid, I had no idea, because I just thought that people, when I talked to them in my head, I just thought people could hear me. And it was just a few years ago, as an adult, as I'm 52 now, so I was like, late 40s, when I realized that people can't hear me when I talk to them in my head. And you'd think an adult should know that, but I don't know, for some reason it just felt like people should know. I don't know why. It just felt, because sometimes when somebody's like really directing their thoughts at me, I can hear them. And it's not all the time. It's not like I can hear everything that people are thinking, but like if somebody's like really focusing on me and directing their thoughts to me, I can hear it. And it's not like it doesn't sound like I'm listening in when you're not supposed, eavesdropping. But it's just like, it just comes through in what feels like a natural form of communication. That's what it feels like. I've done this to people accidentally. One of the funniest examples was when I was younger, I worked at a department store, and our immediate boss or supervisor said that one of us could go home early, and kind of, hey, who all wants to go? So there was like 3 of us that raised our hand and said, oh, I want to go. So usually they do some little game like draw straws or whatever to figure out who gets to go first, or flip a coin, whatever. So this time the supervisor's like, okay, I'll tell you those stories, riddle. I'll tell you a riddle, and whoever solves the riddle gets to go. And I was like, no, I'm so bad at riddles. It takes me forever to figure them out. Now I'm going to lose. I'm so upset. And he goes, okay, just wait. The one I'm going to tell you is, and as soon as he said that, I heard the riddle in my head. It was the riddle, the one about the, what has 3 legs in the morning, 2 legs at midday, and 3 legs in the afternoon, or something like that. And it's a man, because in the morning he's a baby, in midday he's on 4 legs, midday he's a human, or just a grown man on 2 legs, and in the evening he's a old man with 3 legs, because the cane counts as a leg in this story. So the answer is a man. So I'm like, oh, that's the one I know. It's a man. And and I went and I explained the answer, and then I'm like waiting for him to say, yeah, that's right, you get to go. But instead he's just staring at me like completely horrified. And I was like, what? Did I get it wrong? I didn't get it wrong, did I? That's the right answer. And then I realized that I had answered him before he had a chance to talk. And everybody else is looking at me like, what the fuck? And I was like, but that's the one you were going to say, right? And he's like, yeah, how did you know? And I'm like, I just heard it. Like, I thought you had already said it out loud because I heard it. So can I go now? And he's like, yes, please leave. So because I would sometimes have situations like that happen, I just thought that when you focus, when you try, that people do hear each other through their head, through telepathy. And I just thought that that's normal, and that's the native form of communication for humans. That's just what I thought. So that's why it took me until late adulthood, middle to late adulthood, to realize that no, not everybody can hear me when I'm in observation mode and speaking to them through my head. Yeah, what can you do? Oh well, at least it gives you some stories to tell. So you have to take the good with the bad. But those are my experiences with various forms of mutism. I don't know if this is representative of other autistics. I don't know if they have the same type of mutism or if they have different versions. I'm really not sure, because I've tried looking for people to talk about this online, and it tends to be kind of usually it's they're talking about younger people, not so much older people. I just haven't found a lot of information on it, so I'm kind of hoping that people will respond and kind of explain their version of it to see if it's the same, because I'm really curious to see if the way I experience it is normal, quote unquote, in our community, or if this is just something unique to me, or if it's maybe it's not. Is it not autism related? Is it just high anxiety, or is it something else? So I am curious to know what other people think about that. But anyways, that's all for now.